on the foundational skills in reading, and then building on that to provide some evidence-based strategies for how to intensify and amplify that reading instruction to meet the needs of students with more severe reading difficulties, including dyslexia. So I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit more about these training opportunities. So a couple of points I want to stress. It's not a train-the-trainer model. So the folks from each building who complete the training will not be equipped to go back to their building and train their colleagues. There's just simply not enough training hours available to do that. That being said, once we have that one person in each building who completes the training, what I would like to do, it's not required by the law, but what I would like to do through my work at the department is to create a professional learning community of those folks and stay connected and continue to share resources and training opportunities with them over time. Second point I wanted to make is that the trained teacher will not be trained to evaluate for or diagnose dyslexia. That's not the case. We still have our systems in place in schools through IDEA to basically evaluate children for specific learning disabilities in the area of reading, and that is the system that schools will continue to use. And those trained teachers, they will come back basically having a really good understanding of what dyslexia is and what are the warning signs and what are the common characteristics at each grade level, but they certainly won't be equipped to evaluate or to diagnose dyslexia. So just wanted to make that point clear. What will the trained teacher be able to do? Basically, they will act as a resource at the building level. I think they'll be a good point of contact for parents who have questions, for colleagues who have questions, but also be someone who could play an active role on a school-level problem-solving team and can collaborate with other members in that team with designing Tier 2 and Tier 3 support for students who do show risk based on that universal screening in K1. So that would be an appropriate role for the trained teacher. So where are we?
Can I ask a question real quick?
Of course.
Now for the person who's trained, does it have to be a teacher or could it be a school psychologist?
Well, that's a really good question. And in the OARs that we have drafted and presented to the board, let me tell you how we define teacher. So we say the teacher who completes the dyslexia-related training must be a licensed or registered teacher serving in a position teaching students in any configuration of grades K through 5 and assigned to the building at least 0.50 FTE. The position may include, but is not limited to, that of classroom teacher, reading specialist, special educator, or English language learner teacher. So with that definition, it would not include a school psychologist. What I will say is that those draft rules are still open for public comment and will be through the morning of the next board meeting, which is January 26th at 9 a.m. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. I mean, what we were trying to do is to try to keep that definition open enough so that the person each building selected really could vary based on the circumstances at that building and who would be the most logical person. Okay, so where are we with creating this list? So what I just shared is that the first step was for the department to draft OARs related to the teacher training requirements and get approval from the State Board of Education. And once we've done that and we get that approval, then we can actually begin the vetting process. So I took the OARs to the board at their December 8th meeting for a first read, and we're on the consent agenda for the board at their January 26th meeting for that second read and potential approval. So once we get that approval of the OARs, then what the department does is they develop what's called an RFI, or a request for information. It's kind of like an RFP. The difference is that with this RFI, we're really just seeking information from vendors about their training opportunities. And based on the information that they provide, the department will be able to determine if a particular training opportunity meets our criteria to be included on the list. We want to post that RFI in late winter. So if the OARs get approved at the end of January, we could post the RFI in February and begin the review of the information collected, as early as March. And I can hear somebody who needs to mute.
Good. It should all clear itself out then, because terms are all in the next.
And I can still hear somebody. I don't know who it is. Sorry.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to.
Pardon?
Make a note on that.
Sam's going to go ahead. Sam's going to go ahead and mute everybody.
Oh, thanks, Mitch.
Except you, Carrie. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So just kind of talking through this process then. So we can begin reviewing information received from those RFIs in the spring, figure out which trainings meet the criteria, get that list started. So we want to So I just got muted for a second. I'm back. We want to release an initial training list by the end of this spring, and then we'll just continue to add training opportunities to that list through July 31st as we learn about more training opportunities that become available. That way, teachers can begin training as early as June of this year and have until January 1st of 18 to complete that training. So either complete it this summer or complete it in the fall term. So quick recap then, we just talked about the timeline for the teacher training requirements. What we haven't talked about is the timeline for universal screening. I did share that we're still seeking feedback on the plan that was submitted to the legislature. But the way it looks right now for the screening piece, that 2017-18 would be a pilot year for the universal screening. And then the screening requirements would actually begin in the 18-19 school year. And that timeline is a result of some feedback from districts that they wanted to make sure that each teacher from each building had completed the training before any of the universal screening began. So that's why the screening wouldn't begin until 18-19. So the OARs that we shared with the board, and I'm going to wrap up quickly, Sam and Mitch, because I know my time is going over. Those OARs have 4 sections. Basically, the first section just defines key terminology in the rules. The second section talks about that annual list of dyslexia-related training opportunities and basically the vetting process that we'll use. The third section of the OARs talks about the teacher training, and that's the piece that says who that teacher could be, when the training has to be required, etc. And then the final section of the OARs talks about this opportunity for districts to apply for waivers from the teacher training requirements, and that's really the piece that applies to your programs. So let's take a little closer look at that. So in the section of the OARs about waivers, what it states currently is that a school district may petition the superintendent of public instruction for a waiver from those teacher training requirements. And that waiver petition will be reviewed and may be granted when a long-term care and treatment program provides services to students in K through 5, and the ESD or responsible district has a teacher who has completed the required training who's available to provide services to the students in that LTCT CT program. So sort of rephrasing, so if you have an LTCT program and there are students in K-1 in that program, as long as you have a teacher who's been trained through your ESD or through the responsible district who can provide services to those students, you could apply for a waiver from the teacher training requirements. And that waiver would remain in effect as long as those circumstances continue and as long as that LTCT program receives services from that teacher who's completed the required dyslexia training from the ESD or responsible district. So essentially that waiver could go on indefinitely as long as that scenario still holds true. So that's where I'm going to stop and let you know that there is an FAQ that just went out to special ed administrators, to curriculum directors, and is going out to elementary principals as well. And the FAQ will include information not only about the teacher training part, which is our immediate priority, but there's also a section on the universal screening for risk factors of dyslexia in the FAQ. You can access the FAQ at the link here. Basically, you just go to the dyslexia page on the ODE website, and you'll see a link there. So, and it looks like Sam will be able to email that FAQ directly to you all as well, which is terrific. And we'll get that PowerPoint to you as well. So I'm over time, but I wanted to see if there were other questions that people had about these teacher training requirements and how they apply to LTCT programs.
Okay, folks, if you have questions, go ahead. Well, you must have done a good job, Carrie. They all get it.
Oh, I bet there are questions.
This is just for K through 5?
Yes, yes. The training.
What about 6th grade? Is there anything going on with above that? Once sometimes they're not identified till then.
Yeah, there is no requirement in the law about teachers who work with 6th grade and up.
Okay. Other questions?
Yeah,
So
Carrie,
because, yeah, go ahead.
if you have a teacher that has currently gone and gotten training, like specific training, Orton Gillingham or something like that, is there a process then for them to apply that training?
I'm sorry, you said is there a process for what?
Is there a process for them to be able to document that they have that training?
Oh, yeah.
Already?
Good question. So what you'll see in the FAQ, I believe, is if that particular training ends up on the department's list of vetted training and a teacher has completed that same training in the past, they would not need to repeat it. But what we won't be able to do is to individually review, teachers' training portfolios to say, yes, this meets this, yes, this, or no, this does not meet. So it really is, if that training that they took is on the list, then they're good to go.
So, Carrie, if I can ask a clarifying question then, so it's the responsibility of the district to be able to verify if there's a question whether or not the teachers met the criteria for the training.
Yeah, yep. I think if they can direct those questions to me, I should be able to help make sure that.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Other questions? All right. In that case, Carrie, thank you very much. Appreciate the input, the information, incredibly useful. If we get additional questions, we certainly will pass those along to you, and we'll also pass along your information so folks can contact you directly. And have a great afternoon.
That sounds great. Thanks for giving me the time to share the information. I really appreciate it. I'll talk to you later.
Well, no, and thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, Sammy?
Okay, so we're going on with our agenda. Okay, so we're thinking of creating a LTCT advisory group because sometimes Mitch and I, and then we just need to make a decision or ruling quickly. And in the past, I've called certain LTCT contractors or fiscal people, and then what we're trying to do is create an advisory group that will meet kind of ad hoc as needed. And I'll send out a Word document for those that are interested.
So really what we're looking for is we're always, as you guys know, Sam and I essentially make up the LTCT team at the Department of Education. That's it. We're it. And so a lot of times we're wanting input from the field on decisions that we have to make, or you know, do we communicate this, do we communicate that? So having an advisory group that we could go to that could provide us input would be tremendously helpful to us. And so rather than us pick that advisory group, what we're going to do is we're going to ask you guys to nominate folks for that advisory group. And you'll see on the slide that we have a very selective list of, you know, we want to be comprehensive, but we don't want the group to be so large that it becomes unmanageable. And so you can see the representatives that we're looking for. And so we're asking folks to either volunteer or to send us people that they recommend. Is there another slide, Sam?
Yep. No, that's it.
So this is something that we're thinking about. We'll send the information out, and then once we have an idea of who's been who's nominated or who's willing to volunteer, we'll follow up and look at figuring out who's going to be on the advisory committee for us. Any questions about that? Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, next, estimated budgets for 17-19. And remember, all of this is pending future legislation or budget notes. That's our caveat. Okay, next. Because as you know, last biennium, towards the end, that budget note for minimum staffing level just got, boom, thrown at us without any prior warning or hearing or anything. So that might happen again, who knows. So earlier we submitted a policy option package asking for additional funds to fully fund the minimum staffing level. As you all know, because with the minimum staffing level, it just changed our expenditures, but it did not change our revenue source. So we were in deficit for 15-17. Unfortunately, that policy option package was not part of the governor's recommended budget. So it is what it is. So
so the result of that is we're left with the decision, and because the legislature with the budget note was clear around what their intent was, that they wanted there to be adequate staffing in the classrooms, that we decided here at ODE that we're going to stick with the intent of the legislature, and we're going to implement the intent of that legislation of the budget note as much as we can with the funding that we've got. Okay? What we are going to do, though, is we are going to go ahead and build into that, because we now have the option to provide more flexibility in how folks can spend some of the contract money that we provide to you. Okay? So Sam, you want to talk about the estimated revenue and what we're expecting?
yeah, so Google. Okay, so let's say this is just round estimates, okay? Using round numbers, you know, hypothetical situation. If OD's revenue is 38 million and the MSL cost is 40 million, 38, this is how much we have. We have 30 million, which is 95% of, you know, 40 million of how much MSL will actually cost. So if, and then according to our OERs, number 3, it says, and then some of you, for those of you that have been long-term care and treatment contractors a while, you guys remember when OD didn't have sufficient funding, the contracts are funded either at 91% or 93%. There's that cause where if the state funding is less than the state funding needed, it will be prorated. So here's an example. If a classroom costs $100,000 for a teacher, $50,000 for the 2 aides, which equals $200,000, plus the 15% equals $230,000. But if we only have 95%, instead of receiving the full $230,000, you will receive $218,500, which will be prorated.
So essentially what we're saying is we're going to do the calculations for everyone based on the budget note. The actual amounts provided for the contracts will be based on whatever the percentage of revenue that we get. Because at this point in time, we don't know what that revenue is. There's a possibility that the legislature, because the budget note was their idea, even though the POP didn't get into the governor's budget, they may decide to go ahead and allocate those funds anyway. They may not allocate 100% of it. They may allocate half of it. Whatever they choose to do, we don't know at this point in time. So we need to basically, what we're trying to do here is, as we've tried to do in the past, is be transparent with you folks about how we're going to go ahead and do this, the funding. A couple of things we are going to do differently. Sam, if you want to go to the next slide. What we're going to do is instead of trying to do the calculations that we did for the budget note originally, which was 75% of your highest teacher salary, what we're going to ask you to do is we're going to ask you to send us a PDF copy of your teacher salary, and we're going to use the highest teacher salary from each district, and we're going to use that to calculate the funding for your teachers, and do the same thing with the classified with your instructional assistants, whatever the highest is for that, and then give you the 15%, calculate the 15% based on that. What we're going to do then is the only requirement that ODE is going to have is that you have one teacher in every classroom. That will be a minimum requirement. The other funds that are available to you for the aides and the OPC, the other program costs, you guys are free to use any way you want. So if you don't feel...
Within reason.
Well, yeah, within reason, obviously, within whatever the law requires. So in other words, if you don't feel the need to have an aide in the classroom, you don't need to use the funding that we provide in order to do the aid. But we need to be able to justify to the legislature that we are at least trying to meet the intent of the budget note. Questions about that?
And when you submit your teacher's salary, do not include substitute costs or PD costs. It'll be the teacher's salary plus, you know, your associated costs such as PERS,
benefits.
Yeah, the benefits and so forth.
Okay, so what we're trying to do as much as we can.
This is Mark.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, do you want so in terms of the teacher salary, so just like, you know, for one teacher who's the highest paid plus all the fringe on top, and that's the number you're looking for, correct?
That is the number we're looking for.
Yeah.
Okay. And then in terms of so you'll provide, and so like per classroom, so I know you guys are going to give us flexibility on the classified money allocation, but so how many, so are you going to allocate it though on one teacher and two paras per classroom? I mean, in terms of trying to estimate how much revenue we might get even if it's prorated, how's that going to work?
I'm not following. Yes, we're going to follow the budget note for calculating how much each contractor should receive. Then depending on the level of funding that we have to meet that requirement, we will prorate it based on the percentage of the amount needed in order to fully fund it.
Yeah.
So again, if we do that calculation for all the contractors and it comes out to 40 million, but we only receive 38 million in revenue, whatever percentage 38 million of, in Sam's example was 95%, you will receive 95% of what we calculated would have been your full allocation had we had full funding.
Okay, but in terms of just kind of roughly, I mean, it's the teacher and 2 paras per classroom.
That is correct.
Plus 50%.
Plus the 15%, yes. So the calculation will be done the same. Unfortunately, like I said, right now we don't have the funding. And the other thing I want to point out to folks is the reason that we were able to provide the funding that we did for 15-17 was because we spent 100% of our reserves. So we have absolutely no reserves left in this account, and that has been shared with the legislature and with the governor's office, but it is what it is. And so we have no reserves left in this account. So that will impact folks if you're thinking about wanting to expand classrooms. We may not be in a position at ODE, whereas in the past we were able to provide some additional funding support to do that. We simply do not have reserves in this contract or in this program anymore, so we may not be able to. I'll get that. We may not be able to provide you additional funding. We have a question: will our budgets carry over? Your budgets, but within the biennium, will carry over. When we hit June 30th of this year, whatever's left in your budget will not carry over. It will go back into the pot and be redistributed. But next year, between 17 and 18, between the 17-18 and the 18-19 school year, yes, it will do the same thing. If you have carryover, you will be able to carry it over into the next year of the biennium.
Yep. So that's why, for the fiscal reminders, when you please submit your final claims by August or September, because last biennium there was we're kind of cutting it close where some contractors did not submit the final claims, and just like school districts, we have a lapse date. Like if you don't submit your claims by a certain date, the funds disappear. So
we do have we do have the authority to zero out your account. Candace, you sent a question. What about step increases in the second year? I at this point in time, I'm sorry. I don't know how to address that other than to say we'll give you what we can give you. We plan on putting out 100% of the funds that are available to us, and all I can tell you is there won't be anything left for us to. You'll just have to work that out. I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say. Yeah. I mean,
yeah, it'll be like last biennium where every year I'll ask for your teacher salaries because it does go up. So then when I ask for your teacher salaries next week, it'll be for 17-18. And then next January I'll be asking for 18-19.
But again, we may not have the funds available. So if we, in the 18-19 school year, if there's an increase for everybody, and so the costs go up by 3%, then unfortunately the money that's available to us, you may only get 92% instead of 95% of what we calculate. And I'm sorry, I don't know any other way to do it because we don't have reserves. Is the salary schedule that you referred to?
This is Mark again.
Hold on, Mark. Let me answer this question. Is the salary schedule you refer to as the LTC salary on the regular? No, it's whatever your district, or if you're the subcontractor, yeah, whatever your salary scale is, that's what we want. So if you're a school district or an ESD, you have a negotiated salary schedule in your contract, that's what we want. All right, Mark, go ahead.
Is there any chance you guys would just give us the 2-year allocation so we can plan on our end for the step increases? Because those are going to vary from district to district.
Correct. No, we can't because we don't know what we'll get from the state school fund. Remember, 48% of our funding comes from the state school fund, and we won't know what that state school fund allocation is until late in 2017, early 2018. So we can give you an estimate of what, you could take what we're going to give you for the 17-18 school year and estimate you'll get fairly close to that for the 18-19 school year, but we can't give you an exact number because we don't know what we'll receive from the state school fund.
And remember, from the state school fund, the statute, not OER, the statute says the slots times the statewide net operating expense of the previous year.
And unfortunately, the number of individual students being served in the LTCT programs is going down significantly. And so again, that also is impacting our revenue. As the numbers go down, the number of students being served in this program goes down, so does our revenue. If we are bargaining with certified and classified, can we apply an assumption for COLA and an insurance cap? You can, but we can't guarantee you that you're going to get the additional money you need in order to cover that COLA or cap. Because again, we're going to give you everything we got, and we can't tell you we're going to get a 3% increase ourselves, because we won't. What we get is what we get. Okay. Yep. All right, Sam, what's next? Any other questions about that? Again, one thing I want people to understand and be clear about is, first of all, we will be allocating 100% of the dollars we have available. Now remember, in the law, it requires us to keep up to a 5% set aside for an emergency fund. We are not keeping the full 5%. This last biennium we kept 4%. This next biennium we'll probably keep less than that. So with that money taken out by statute, then 100% of the funds that we have available will be allocated to everybody. So it's not like we're going to keep anything back to build up our reserves. Unfortunately, there's nothing really more we can do. We will just simply send out what we've got, and that's what we'll give you. Anything else? When will we be getting this request? Will it come to separate email? I'm sorry, when will we be getting this request?
For the teacher stuff.
Monday. Probably Monday. Sam is saying that it'll probably come out. He'll send the email out on Monday.
Right, because we have a meeting scheduled with our fiscal person on Monday at 9:30.
Yep.
So after that meeting, then I'll send the request out to everybody.
Okay. Whew. Now, again, understand, and I want to make it clear because a lot of people don't understand this, is that because of the fact that ODE is now under the executive branch, with the governor being the superintendent of public instruction, we must take a neutral stance on all budgetary items and support the governor's budget. So we don't have the authority to be able to approach the legislature ourselves or to lobby for an increase. That doesn't mean that other people can't. That just means that folks need to understand that our hands are tied. We have to take a neutral stance that is supportive of the governor's budget with what's in the governor's budget. We have another question. Will you allocate a smaller percentage of the total biennial budget in the first year, the same as the state school fund? Now there's an interesting question I hadn't thought of. My initial response is we probably wouldn't do that because, again, I don't want to appear as if we're keeping a reserve when you guys need the money to serve the kids. So I would rather just go ahead and allocate it all, and then again the following year when we get our allocation from the state school fund, turn around and allocate it all again. Sam, did you want to? Yeah, and keeping in mind too, folks, that what we allocate, because we've been saying this to you for the last 3 years, there's always money left on the table from you folks. Not everyone spends 100% of those dollars, so that carryover will come back to us. So that will help alleviate some of this, because we may have an extra $500,000, $600,000 that we'll be able to throw back into the pot. But at the same time, I really do feel that it's important for us to allocate everything we've got so that you guys can serve the kids.
Yep. So if we do have carryover from 15, 17, like unspent from the contractors, then most likely it'll come out in the second year of the contract.
Yeah, because unfortunately, again, and Sam mentioned, when you guys submit your claims later in the year, we have an obligation to pay those, but it also requires us then to wait until everything is cleared before we can determine how much carryover we got. So the earlier we can get those final claims in, the easier it is for us to be able to make a determination of how much money is available.
Yeah, but last time there was an instance where someone had submitted their final claim or invoice, and then later on they asked if they could resubmit with an adjusted amount. And we did. So and then we said sure, because we don't want to hurt. We don't want to hurt the school districts or ESDs.
All right, guys, that's a lot of information. So thank you for being patient with us. Are there any questions about anything we've discussed today? The advisory board, the funding stuff that we've discussed.
Hey, Mitch, this is Mark again. I apologize for having to ask so many questions, but just so because I'm just trying to sort of form an estimate in my head. So, like right now, I'm just going to use like, Perry Center day treatment. I've got 5 classrooms there right now, and as you guys are aware, the enrollment in those classrooms varies over the course of the school year. Sometimes there's 7 kids, sometimes there's 4, sometimes there's 10. When looking into next year, I should plan on, for that location specifically, give you what's, 5 teachers and 2 pairs per classroom, plus the 15% is going to generate, the revenue that would come to me, and then I've got flexibility on how to use that classified allocation.
So what Candace asked the question, Mark, that really goes to what you're saying is, will this create 2 funding pots rather than 3 funding pots as we've had in the past? I guess we went back and forth about this, and this is one of the reasons why I wish we would have had an advisory group, because we went back and forth about this, and we said, okay, we're going to stick to the minimum requirement that you have a teacher in every classroom, just because everybody has to agree that's best practice, without a doubt. So then, if we do that, how do we allocate the other dollars that are remaining, and what formula do we use to fairly allocate those other dollars? So that would have created 2 pots, but because we've created this, well, we didn't, the legislature created this with the budget note, we're just going to go ahead and continue to use the same formula in order to calculate it, because it keeps it fair for everybody. And then those 2 other pots, not the teacher, but the OCP and the CIP? EICP. Yeah. Those 2 pots of money, you guys will have the flexibility. The money that goes to pay for the aids and the other program costs, you guys will have the flexibility to determine how you want to use that money. Again, like I said, the example, Mark, in your case, we're going to give you funding for a classroom for 1 teacher and 2 aides, but if you, in your understanding of your program and your you oversee your program, you realize you don't need 2 aides in that classroom. Fine. You have 1 aide, and then the funding that went for the other aide you can use for whatever you need.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, if you want to use it to pay for your special ed programs, you want to use it to pay for additional, whatever you want to use that money for, within reason, obviously, within the LTCT umbrella, you're welcome to do that. But again, what we want to stick to, though, is absolutely mandatory. You must have a teacher in every classroom.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? All right, I don't hear any other questions. Going once, going twice. And obviously, if you guys have other questions that are more pertinent to your program, that are program specific, feel free to reach out to Samurai. Obviously, we'll answer your questions. But in general, that's what we got for you at this point in time. Now, you guys know that we are trying to be as transparent as possible. So as things change and as we get more information, we'll share that with you. And more than likely, as we get into the legislative session and we start to get around April or May, we'll probably have another webinar to update folks on where we stand and give you an opportunity to ask questions. So, yep. Sam?
And we're doing this early because we've gotten requests from LTCT sites asking, can you give us our budgets early? Because normally we give you your allocations or budgets in March, but I guess some people ask us, okay, so we'll try our best.
Okay. Well, folks, thank you very much. Have a great afternoon. Stay safe, and we'll talk at you soon.
Bye, everybody.